Albert Einstein famously said, "If you've read it on the internet, it must be true," a quote that most YouTube list channels seem to have taken pretty seriously. But it is often difficult to know if the things you read and view online are true or false, which makes it incredibly difficult for someone like me that cannot stand misinformation. And the last thing I would want is to be a source of such misinformation. So in today's video, I'd like to show you how truly difficult it can be and how easily we can be led to believe in rather easily dismissible facts. Okay, so it's been a few years since I first stumbled upon a supposed fact. It goes like this. The average person only uses about 10% of their brain. I've seen variations of this claim many times before, and it's quite easily believable. For example, brain is a rather complex organ, which I, or rather any average person, have little to no knowledge. Furthermore, bring a serious-faced scientist played by Morgan Freeman say the following, and you've already had me.
Animal life on Earth goes back millions of years, yet most species only use 3 to 5% of its cerebral capacity.
Nevertheless, experts in both neuroscience and medicine can attest to why almost our entire brain is active throughout the day. But it did make me wonder, if the claim is so easily believable, it should have at least originated from a reputable source to begin with. And Holy Community Guidelines did I discovered a rabbit hole deeper than the Mariana Trench. A quick dive sent me to an article on a website known as Snopes.com. Snopes is a website that specializes in debunking urban legends, and most people seem to agree that it is a quite reputable source. In the article, they claim that the myth gained popularity in 1920s, where it shows a self-help advertisement from the 1929 World Almanac with the line, "There is no limit to what the human brain can accomplish." Scientists and psychologists tell us we use only about 10% of our brain power. This supposedly caught traction. They further claim that this was likely originated from the books of a Harvard psychologist, William James. So if Snopes is to be believed, the myth began in 1890s. And to solidify this claim even further, you can find hundreds of articles and books telling the exact same story. Simple enough. Quite an interesting quiz. Case closed. If it wasn't for the fact that I bought those books, and none of them include any mention of using only 10% of the brain. In fact, it would be a bit strange if it did, as William James was a psychologist with little to no equipment of testing brain activity, which was a disappointing end to my search, considering he wrote more than 20 books. So I went to another article written about James and went through the rest of his works. Most are unrelated to the origins of the myth. Then I was able to find a book by James called The Hidden Self. I was able to read the entire book, considering it is one of his less lengthy works. Unfortunately, it does not shed any light on the origins of the myth, as the book only consists of psychological information. That leaves us with just 2 more books. And this, my friends, is where we go off the deep end. A quick search reveals that I'm not the first to investigate this source, as most of the top results are that of other people looking for the exact same thing. As it turns out, no one has been able to find a statement by William James, nor has anyone been able to locate a lecture, or perhaps an article written by him. So perhaps the answer lies in the books I hadn't yet gone through. And I still couldn't find a mention of this supposed fact. Using various online archives, catalogs, and indexes, I was able to locate 2 different versions of this book named The Laws of Habit. But the first issue was published in 1911. The thing is, if we are searching for a book responsible for a widespread global misconception, I fail to see how such a niche-related book from the early 20th century with a readership of a few thousand at most could possibly have served as the catalyst. Not to speak of the tremendous improbability of this book coming in the hands of thousands of artists and movie creators that have contributed in the rise of this myth. So let's put this in the "will check later" file for now. The other version of the book was rather lengthy and not properly documented. At this point, there was no doubt in my mind that the book must contain the supposed fact for 2 main reasons. First, the book being so badly documented must be the reason no one was able to find this fact. And second, this particular version had a rather bigger readership than the first one. This had to be it. And if I wanted to know the truth, there was only one thing left for me to do: To read the entirety of a 1,000 pages in a rather low-quality document? On second thought, maybe I should see if I can find someone that already did. I eventually found a guy on Reddit who, for a small fee, could document the book for me in a texted format. But it doesn't matter because it does not contain anything even remotely relevant to this mystery. Imagine the amount of frustration at this point. No 10% of brain, no misconceptions, no nothing. And if this is not it, I highly doubt this article exists. I mean, I even clicked page 2 on Google search, so you know I've been thorough. After pacing back and forth and questioning my own sanity for the better part of the week, I decided to read the final book, a rather short one, named The Energies of Men. I also found another book with the exact title, but it was unfortunately about a subject that I'd rather not discuss. And finally, well, not exactly, I was still disappointed, but I found what all this was about. Let me read out the exact thing I found in this book. Compared with what we ought to be, we are only half awake. Our fires are damped, our drafts are checked. We are making use of only a small part of our possible mental and physical resources. I, for the love of God, cannot wrap my head around the fact that this small excerpt from a book about psychology led to such widespread misconception. But with some thought, we can understand what really happened. An easier way to explain this is with a game we played in school where we all stood in a line and the last person had to draw a house on the back of the person in front of him who had to recognize it and draw it in the person in front of him as well, which continued until the first person in the line. A rather silly game, but the point here is the house drawn by the last person became a disfigured mountain as it reached the first person. The exact same thing happened with our dear fact. What started with that book by James was adapted by multiple authors, creators, and writers who decided to make their own versions, and eventually the 10% idea stood with the mass. Now, to be fair, this journey wasn't necessary, but it definitely opened my eyes and humbled me on boasting with facts that I read on the internet. I hope you guys enjoyed this extremely meaningless journey with me. See you guys in the next video.